So namaste. Welcome to Satsang today. So Satsang is, as always, for direct experience of truth, and then to come to live as quickly as possible and as easily as possible from that place of truth. So I want to do that today, as always, just to try to go into a direct experience of truth. And maybe again to see how much easier it might be than we have imagined to see it and then to come to be it, live as it. We already are that truth. The truth is that there is only the one being that is formless and intangible and invisible, and yet is appearing as all of this that seems to be here. So let's go ahead and begin to experience that as quickly as possible now. So for this next 10 or 15 minutes, I just want you to keep your eyes open if you can. And that means you. So we're going to experience the Buddha nature, the form and formless as one. And hopefully that's just going to blow away some cobwebs, that it's easier than we might think to do this. So right now, whatever room that you're in, you can just notice the objects in the room. So here there's these bodies, there's these chairs, there's these tables. Whatever room you're sitting in, if you're watching online, just noticing the objects in the room, the things that you're seeing with your senses and noticing. And you can take that all in effortlessly. It doesn't cost you any energy, does it, to notice this? If we're not thinking about it, it doesn't cost us any energy. Let's just say we're just noticing. And then just to switch mode of attention to noticing the space in which the room and all of this is appearing. So we're going from zooming into looking at things, objects, bodies. We're going to zoom out, as we've been calling it, to notice the space in which the room and all of us are appearing. All this stuff here is appearing. There's a kind of context, field, emptiness, nothingness, whatever we want to call it, which is not a thing, in which all of these things are actually appearing. So just whatever your eyes are resting on, doesn't matter, but we can be aware of the space around all the objects in the room. So just by shifting our focus, we can see the formless nature of reality. There it is. Not seeing it with our eyes, are we? We're sort of knowing it. There's a knowing that there is some space in which all of this is appearing. And we normally just call it empty space. It doesn't really have any importance to us. It's just empty space where there is no stuff yet. But what if it is so much more important than that? And again, just keeping your eyes open, noticing that you can easily zoom in to look at a particular object, think about a particular object inside the space, and you can easily zoom back out again to notice the context in which it's all appearing. All of the objects are the content, what's appearing inside the space. And the space itself, spaciousness, emptiness, whatever you want to call it, is not a thing yet, is it? There's no thingness about it. It's not a thing. It must be here first, that no thingness, that spaciousness. You couldn't have this room and everything in it and everyone in it if there was no space here first. Somebody's working now. Eyes are going. It's good to check these things out though, isn't it? It's good to, I'm not looking over there and I start laughing. So keeping our eyes open, we're going to notice that we can switch effortlessly back between form, objects, and formlessness, objectless, to whichever mode we choose to function in. And of course, most of our life, we're taught to only notice the objects, that there isn't anything worth noticing other than that. And we're coming to realize there's something that perhaps we have overlooked, which is much more important, perhaps, because it's going to be here after the room has gone, after these bodies have gone. And it's going to be here 50 million years from now. It was here 50 million years ago. In fact, it doesn't really have any sense of time, does it, without any objects coming and going inside. So if all these objects in here were gone, would there be any sense of time or coming or going for the space? If the room was gone, the building was gone, your body was gone, everything gone, then there's going to be no sense of time or change or difference or distance or becoming, endings, beginnings, all of that become irrelevant then. So just noticing right now, you can already do what the Buddha did, what he was pointing to. You can switch between form and formless at will. And that is a significant thing to realize, isn't it? That you can do that. Maybe we didn't know we could do that so easily. What is the issue then? If we've just done that in 5 minutes here, recognizing the formless space in which all of this is appearing, which is the intelligence, powering the mind and the body and all the thoughts. What is the issue? Why can't we stay like that? Why, when we leave this satsang or we go about the rest of our day, are we going to go back to only paying attention to objects, to thoughts? Why is that going to happen? Is it because the mind has some magic pull over us that we're not aware of? It seems like it. It really seems like it. It's going to be one of those days, isn't it? But really, if we look at why is it that we get drawn back to phenomena? What is it really that's so appealing? It could be something maybe even simpler than we've realized. Maybe there is an assumption, a thought, a belief that we're buying into right now, that we can see past right now. And that is maybe more primal, more instinctive, instilled into us from a very early age. From the moment that we begin to think, we begin to categorize things. We begin to define them, compare them, label them, don't we? And the very first label category that we entertain is that the formless space in which all of this is appearing is different to the objects in the room and the room itself and our thoughts, subtle objects of thoughts, and all of that, that they are in fact two different things that are opposites. And it sure seems that way, doesn't it? It sure seems that way. If I try to put my hand through this table, it's not going to work. I'm not quite mastered that one yet, Jedi mind tricks. But I can wave it through the empty space. So they really seem opposite, don't they? The objects have sound and shape and color and texture. The formlessness has none of that. But if for a second we just don't treat them as different, so again, keeping our eyes open, if we don't, and how do we do that in practice? We don't prefer form or formless. So we're just going to notice wherever our attention is, if it's on a form or a subtle form or a tangible, gross form like a body or a table. Then we can just notice that as we don't prefer, as we don't choose one or the other, then something's going to start to occur in our experience. Something's going to change for us. If we prefer, which we've kind of all come to the highest preference here, by the time you reach a satsang like this, The highest preference is formlessness. Form is secondary, we're taught, and it's coming and going, and it's transient and temporary and all of that. And formlessness, emptiness, nothingness is more important. And that's as far as our mind can take us, really, isn't it? To begin to discern that there is something formless here that we're just experiencing now. If we zoom out again, if you've zoomed in, zoom back out, noticing the spaciousness. And then noticing if we just don't entertain now a choice, we don't try to choose form or formlessness, wherever our attention is, it's just where it is. That resting there becomes this supreme peace, this undisturbable peace where sometimes my attention's going to be on thoughts, forms, sometimes it's going to be on formlessness. And I don't need to police that, because if I do, I am strongly stating that they are two things and I have to choose one of them. So our preference here becomes the issue. Our choice is actually emphasizing that there are these two different worlds. So just resting here again, just with our eyes open for a minute. We'll close our eyes in a minute, I promise. And noticing your eyes can look at forms, or you can become aware of the formlessness. And that's just happening, switching back and forth for as long as we sit here. If we sat here for another hour doing this, then at some point our attention would drift to thoughts, wouldn't it? Or some emotion or some experience we're having, some sensation in the body, a sound. Hopefully we won't have the garbage truck reversing like last satsang. Some sound outside. And then at some point it's going to just let go of looking at objects, and our attention will just zoom out on its own, and we'll find this empty nothingness again. So if that's just going to keep happening over and over and over, do we need to do anything to make that happen? And perhaps more importantly, can we do anything now to make that happen? Maybe our choosing is emphasizing the sense that there are two. The whole idea of choice here is that there's two things. We can choose one or the other. Form, formlessness. Nothingness or somethingness. Maybe that is inherently the last place our mind can go here. So what happens just for a moment if we don't choose either of those, if we don't try to choose anything, don't prefer, just for a few moments? There's an immediate sense of freedom. Doesn't matter where my attention is, doesn't matter whether I'm looking at a thought. If I'm not resisting it, I'll feel peaceful. If I'm aware of the formlessness, if I'm not preferring it or resisting it, I'll be peaceful. So here is the end of the road for ego and choosing one or the other, says ego, duality. Which one of these is it? Form or formless? And of course our ego says formlessness, spaciousness, emptiness, feels so good. I want that one. But maybe it only feels so good because we're not choosing there. We're not preferring there. We're not dividing there. So can we, with our eyes open like this, allow our attention to wander wherever it goes? As we do that, it's going to come back to the emptiness by itself, inherently. And spontaneously at some point, it will dawn inside that there really is not two, that form and formless are one. And we can kind of prove that if we really look deeper into our experience right now. Where does that formless space end and your body starts? There's a bit of squinting and thinking going on. Is there really a place where the formless space stops? How could it stop if it's not a thing and my body starts? So it's easy to believe this myth that the formlessness stops around my body and my body takes the place of it, or any object or thought, this laptop table, anything. That this room itself has displaced the formlessness is the myth, isn't it? That it's one or the other. But how does formlessness get displaced? How would you shove it out of the way with an object? Can you do that? Is there anything about it you could push aside? This bit may or may not interest you, but it's okay. I'm just kind of planting some seeds. Let's just rest now with our eyes closed. If you want to, you don't have to. Noticing as we close our eyes and we wait for the next thought to appear inside our mind, just paying a little attention to what's going to pop up next in my mind. I'm really curious. And in that looking, there is a vast emptiness there. There is not a thing yet. There are no thoughts yet. Here is the field. Here is the spaciousness again. No thing there yet. And then at some point, a thought will pop up. A thing has appeared inside the thingless. So the same meditation with our eyes closed, we can zoom into the thought. We can zoom out to notice the space in which the thought is appearing. And is the space, the formlessness, any different, whether there's a thought form appearing inside it or it's completely empty? Is the field, is the spaciousness any different at all, whether our mind is full or empty? Is it bothered about full or empty, really? So just like this, whether our eyes are open or closed, we can experience the same state, condition, for want of a better word, as the Buddha did and does. That no matter whether there's forms present or absent, thought forms, physical forms, whether our attention is on the form or formless, we don't need to feel disturbed. We don't need to do anything special. And we most certainly don't need to get rid of forms. There's no need to empty your mind if you don't prefer one or the other. Sometimes I'll be noticing thoughts. Sometimes I'll be noticing the space in which they appear, the awareness, the beingness, consciousness, emptiness, the field, whatever you want to call it, also known as you. So the idea of choice and preference works in duality and works right up to here, but then must be released. The final and the first preference, form or formless. And the self says yes, doesn't try to pick, doesn't try to decide. Much more fun. So if we could imagine for the rest of your life, your attention at some point is going to wander to thoughts, stay there for a while, and then at some point it's going to wander back to the formlessness, and then it'll go to thoughts again, or a sound or a sensation, some phenomenon. Then it'll go back to the noumenon, the space, the emptiness, and then it'll go back to phenomena again. This is just going to keep happening, isn't it? Do we need to be disturbed by that? Only if we have the idea that one is better than the other. And it seems that way. It seems like the emptiness, the silence is just so much better than form, isn't it? So much nicer. Just want to hang out there. I want to live there. But maybe that's because when our attention is on the formlessness, we're not choosing. And in fact, we're not even seeing two there. There's nothing to choose from in the formlessness. and nobody to choose either. Maybe this someone pops up every time we try to choose and disappears again every time we're not choosing. Just like that, in and out, there and gone, there and gone. And maybe it's just a thought. So whether your eyes are open or closed right now, it doesn't matter. Just noticing the field, the emptiness in which there is yet nothing. Zoomed out. And then your attention is going to wander at some point back to something, either a thing in here or a thing out there. And if that moment when that happens, we don't prefer, we don't choose, then we stay before duality. We stay before change and time and becoming and difference and distinction. And there'll be peace. In the rest of our life, really, we could say all that's going to happen, all that's going to change is our attention is going to move from one to the other. And at some point we'll be resisting that, and at some point we won't. Doesn't it make awakening simple then? My attention's on form right now, on thoughts, and I really want it to go back to formlessness. Okay, what if you just drop that preference? See what happens. If your attention is fully engaged in some thought stream or some emotion coming from it or some experience you're having, be fully engaged in it. Don't resist it at all. And immediately you'll zoom back out again. Can't help but. This is the simplest meditation that I can bring, is just simply not choosing here, recognizing form and formless, but not buying the idea that they're necessarily two, even though they seem to be. Don't they really seem to be, don't they? I can sit on this chair and have a hard time sitting in empty space. I've not mastered that one either yet. Working on it. I'll let you know. So I'm just trying to have a little fun. I'm just trying to not make it so serious. Not make it so difficult. And not make where the Buddha used to live or talk about such an ooh and ah place. It's not really easy. We've just done it today. And we're just gonna, for the rest of our life, get better at coming back to this choicelessness. The place before there's anything to choose. Our mind would say there's definitely a choice. The most important choice of all is this one. But if you've had enough of that back and forth and yo-yo thing that we do, in, out, I'm in the formlessness, I'm expansive, everything's perfect, everything's beautiful. I can never imagine a time when I would go back to illusion and then 5 minutes later, I'm in hell. I feel terrible, my body hurts, my life hurts. And all I want is to get back to that place. And we're laughing, but I remember just how awful that was. What if we don't choose there? What if we let go of this powerful, powerful desire, which seems to make sense and does serve us to a certain point, but now actually gets in the way? Then if our attention is on phenomena or the noumenon, formlessness, it doesn't matter, we're looking at the same thing. There is only the one. Whether it looks like something currently or looks like nothing at all, why should we feel different? So we can meditate just like this, which is really only a noticing. It's a noticing, it's not a doing, is it? Paradoxically, we have to choose formlessness to get to this point. The paradox of any authentic teaching is where I end up contradicting myself all the time. So I hope that has given you a taste of your Buddha nature, freedom, awakening, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. And all that's going to happen is that that's going to become more and more continuous. You spend less and less of your waking state choosing. You catch yourself quicker when you're choosing and you stop it. I don't need to choose. My very choosing, formlessness, wanting to get back there, it's emphasizing that it is different from what I'm experiencing right now. Of course, your mind really will like this because it will just seem too simple and there aren't any problems to solve here. There isn't anything to fix, is there? There's no concept that you can take into this Buddha nature that still stands up. Whether I think I'm looking at form or formless, they are the same. That knowingness will powerfully come from inside out. As I begin to just relax more in my essential nature. Just noticing how our ego works now. It wants to pick one or the other. It wants to get rid of one thing and have only the other thing. But that is impossible in the one. So we're just opting out of that and choosing to embrace the formlessness, whichever way it's showing itself. Is it showing itself as a thing right now? Or is it showing itself as nothingness? Okay. So I will take a moment to read a couple of questions that have come in. If anybody wants to ask or share something, we'll do that as well. I'll try and get through a couple of these first. This says, hi Helen, like many, I have been on the spiritual path for many years and recently have been experiencing a deepening with long periods of uncaused joy, which is a term I really love as it's such a simple, clear way of describing it. I'm not getting stuck in areas of my life that I used to. And although I am quite busy running a mental health care business in Sydney, I'm not feeling a lot of the pressure I used to, and things are flowing a lot easier, including my relationships. There is one part of my life, though, that I've remained quite stuck in and still feel a lot of fear around. It's dreaded public speaking thing. Oh, I'm totally with you there. I have a terrible, almost phobic type fear around this, and I can clearly trace it back to when I had to read a poem out loud in front of the school when I was 9 years old. At the time, I felt I really humiliated myself when I quivered and shook as I tried to read the poem aloud. You guys online can't see my legs shaking right now, right? So to make matters worse, my parents were there, and after, when we walked home, they walked in front of me and never mentioned it again. I remember feeling so ashamed and so wanting them to ask me about it, but they never did. Anyhow, now at 50 years old, I'm still quivering at the thought of doing it, and I'm still resisting anytime I have to. It's coming up again as I may have to run a staff training course later this year. For the first time, though, I really don't want to avoid it or pass it pass it on to someone else like I usually do. I think I'm questioning my thought pattern so much more these days. And I can see that this is such an old conditioned pattern that possibly has never been questioned or inquired due to all the negative emotions attached to it. It feels like a really dark, dense blob inside me sometimes. Of course, the whole, I've shifted so much stuff and why is this still here is coming up also. Thanks, Helen. Any advice would be helpful. I'm not sure if I need to put myself in these situations more to get used to it and allow and accept the fear, or do more self-inquiry type questions, or both. I hope you get to Australia one day for a retreat. I do too. I'm open to that, just saying. So should you do more inquiry, or should you just kind of push your way through it? I'd probably say both, right? These things are inherent within a lot of us, aren't they? This, what it feels like to speak in front of a group of beings is like, for me, it was like having everything that I thought I was examined under a microscope, and then put on YouTube for everyone to see, you know. So obviously you're not with the YouTube thing, but I can totally understand where you're going with this, how you feel with this. And the only thing that worked for me that I can say effectively got rid of, I was joking about my legs shaking, by the way. The fear was really questioning if there are any other beings. Because if, like we were doing earlier in the meditation, if we believe we're sat in a room full of beings, or if you believe you're giving a presentation or leading a meeting with all these other beings, then that fear is going to be inherent, because of the nature of our ego. If something is outside of me, separate to me, here's this either orness again, me here giving the meeting and everyone else that's listening, then I'm going to feel that I have to put on a good show, so to speak, so that everyone likes me and I feel more approved of and loved of, and that there isn't any shame and that kind of thing, because I'll feel safer then and all of that. So is there anyone else out there to impress or to criticize? And is there anyone in here to do a bad job of it? As much as we want to believe, and our body may be telling us in that moment, yes, there really is some other beings in this room listening. We can really hold this question, are there really any other beings, actually? And I sat with this, and I sat with this, and I sat with this, and never came to a definitive answer up here, but came to a definitive answer. My body was telling me more and more that actually, no, there's lots of human bodies or nothingness appearing as human bodies, but other beings to judge us, to evaluate our performance, to rate us, all of that kind of thing. Not so much, not at all. So if you can just go ahead and do it with the fear there and inquire at the same time, then great. But if the fear is paralyzing, I'd suggest really inquiring first into this. I mean, you might be one of those people that can just walk right through the fear as it is now. If you are, great, then, you know, sitting in the room as you're giving that, you can be asking if there's any other beings really. So it's up to you really in that way, but I would do both. Take it head on and don't stop with the inquiry until you're comfortable. You might never be doing cartwheels in front of a group of beings, but at least until you're comfortable and peaceful and you don't feel any different, whether you're in the room on your own or whether you're surrounded by other beings that you're having to give this presentation to. So I hope that one helps. We have 2 hands up online. If anybody wants to ask in the room as well, let me know after this one. We'll go with Angie first. When you're ready, Angie.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
What you've just, your introductory talk has predictably completely bamboozled the mind.
It's not going to like it, mind, is it? Because it says
full of
work about then, right?
but something in my being absolutely loved it and responded with a recognition of utter freedom. So another way of voicing what you've said, in my understanding, is, okay, we don't choose between form and formlessness, but in a way, it's transcending that there is even a chooser.
Yeah.
So it's resting in and as identity as being completely free of a chooser. Could you respond to that?
Yeah, there's the first the first distinction, the first choice is form or formless. And then when I buy that one, there'll seem to be a subtle form here of a someone to choose. So I'm in a whole world of pain then, aren't I? A whole world of choice and distinction, duality. And of course, all that still seems to be right now, it still seems like I'm sitting in a room here with people and that all of you are online there. But having recognized there isn't a chooser, because there isn't actually a separate being when I look, all I can find is the empty spaciousness that's everywhere. And some places it's appearing as form, like this form, like that form, all the subtle forms of thoughts and emotions, experiences, sensations, all of that. So again, not choosing is exercising the knowing that there isn't anything to choose and anybody to choose. When I do choose, maybe that is subtly reinforcing the idea that there is two and a chooser, as you said. Yeah. And we need that. We absolutely do need that when we're lost in the world of phenomena. So much so that we might not even recognize there is something here eternally. We do need to choose the formlessness first for in whatever length of time works for each of us. But then that becomes the issue, the last choice we're making, really, that emphasizes a sense that I'm here choosing. Right now I'm sat here and I can choose what to look at. But really all that's happening is attention is wandering from form to formless and back again. That's the only thing that's ever been going on. It looks at thoughts and the body feels the emotion of those thoughts. And then it goes back to formlessness. And then it goes back to thoughts. But really, that's just going on, isn't it? There's no entity choosing that. And as that sinks in, it's utter freedom.
I mean, what I'm experiencing now, and I've been tasting at times in the last few weeks since coming across you and doing my best to put into practice what you communicate. What I'm experiencing right now as a result of my mind being completely blown by what you've just said is a kind of inability to even take interest or form thoughts. That's not to say thoughts aren't here.
You're just not interested in them. They're
No.
just no more important than the table or the pillow that you're resting your arm on, right?
Yeah.
They're just objects. They're just subtle objects. We've given them such specialness. These are the most important objects, most important, and we focus our entire energy on thoughts, don't we?
Yeah.
When they lose their specialness, they're just thoughts, actually. Then it's really hard to tell if they're even there. They might be there, they might not. It really doesn't matter.
They're very ephemeral and flimsy.
Yeah.
And yet, paradoxically, it appears that this freedom has come from someone putting into practice.
And there is the beautiful paradox of the infinite self appearing to be someone, somewhere, appearing to make this choice until it realizes its choicelessness. And how it does that, why it does that, who knows? But it comes back full circle, doesn't it? It just kind of I'm right where I started, but now I'm conscious of where I started with this whole thing.
Wow.
Your mind is never going to get that right. So it's just going to be, there might be an uncomfortable feeling, a feeling that we've just pulled the rug out from underneath you or something. It's because mind is looking for a final conclusion, final point where that I've done it now or something like that.
I've landed and that's it.
Yeah.
But
Where we stick your enlightenment badge in the post and go, there you go, you've done it now, And,
but actually there's a sense of being catapulted into absolute nothingness and no oneness.
So the fullest realization is, if I am being a mum right now, dealing with an issue with my daughter and really, really dealing with that is no different than sitting here with you guys, absolutely lost in emptiness, where nobody can speak or move or wants to. There's no difference in those in the end, because they are the same. In the fullest realization, they won't feel any different. Of course, we might not be experiencing that right now, but just sort of pointing to where it goes to. Yeah, wonderful.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Helen.
Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Krish, is it? Yep.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. First time I've attended.
Welcome.
The response you gave to that lady about public speaking, that quite resonated quite a lot, because that's a long perennial fear of mine as well.
It was for me. It took me 2 or 3 years to be able to sit in front of a camera like this without being terrified, and then have it on YouTube and all that stuff. It's kind of inherent in a lot of us, isn't it, that kind of fear?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess when you have that anxiety in your body as well, it prevents you from speaking from a place of truth and wholeness. So it's like the ego hijacks it, and then you're speaking from the position of the ego. So just speaking from a place of rest, that's when that organic spontaneity comes through, and you feel you're speaking from a place of truth.
And you're doing that right now, aren't you?
Yes. So some of the questions that I had choreographed to ask you, I've thrown them out the window. I'm just going straight in now.
Good.
Which is the best place to operate from. I do agree.
It's not to say those questions don't have value, but you can kind of feel they feel a bit more stale, don't they? Some of them, that they might be contrived in a way. The mind is trying to find a problem. But...
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's true. And if they have an egoic charge to them.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel there's a difference when they have like a divine charge to them or an egoic charge. You know the difference.
Yeah. And your body tells you, doesn't it? Your body tells
you. Absolutely, 100%. But yeah, I mean, I can still speak on some of the questions that I was going to ask, but I think I'll be able to speak more authentically rather than go into a bit of an attack mode, which I feel I have in me at the moment, which is like, because of the frustration of feeling separate, feeling stuck in separation. I seem to be oscillating between the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's confusing for a seeker at the moment. I think with me, I kind of like, I look at the spiritual marketplace, and you just get completely overwhelmed with so many different people. Even with the irony is that even within non-duality, there's so many differences of opinion. There's so much separation, when you think that they would be all singing from the same hymn sheet in non-duality, but there's a spectrum of opinion within non-duality. So you don't know what's to believe, what is true or what not. So you have to follow your inner essence, or to do a degree, your inner guru. You have to be led by your intuitions.
Which is right back to what you were saying, isn't it? Just to jump in there, your body will tell you whether the person you're currently listening to has any value for you right now. Your body will tell you. There's something there, isn't that's what your body, just as if you know yourself if you're speaking from the authentic place or not.
Mhm.
You'll also be able to tell if you're really open, if you're sort of listening quietly to your body, how is it responding to what I'm hearing right now, or what I'm taking in, or what I'm studying, or, there's not just a satsang like this, but if you read a book or anything, and anything that you're sort of studying, your body will tell you whether it's helpful for you right now or not.
100%. I think something what the Buddha said, which really resonated with me, is when the more quieter you become, the more you hear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's when you listen to speakers and when you listen to books, the more do you become more quiet.
Yeah.
When in their presence. I think Ramana Maharshi said something similar to that as well. But yeah, I guess in terms of the ego, like I guess my analogy would be like concentrated cordial, and like just if you keep on adding water to it, then eventually it's like it dilutes, doesn't it? The color. And I feel that there is a dilution occurring within me at the moment. There's
Good.
just a fading occurring.
It
The
becomes
volume.
more fluid, doesn't it? More less rigid, and you start to be able to have more original thoughts, more sort of useful thoughts, rather than the same old nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely more original. I think that's another marker for me as well. When I'm listening to someone, rather than just, are they coming up with something new? Is there something, is there something? Because I guess a little frustration from me is that why is this expression, this non-dual message, only being expressed in the realm of teaching? Why don't we see it in other forms, in innovation, in technology, in music, in a whole? And I feel that perhaps I could probably.
It would be nice if that were to
Politics.
happen. But the astonishing realization I came to is most of the world is invested in duality at the moment, and that's okay, isn't it? But maybe we're here to see that change, through in a generation. Who knows? But it would be nice. I think music, art, science, poetry, all of that can express non-duality quite well, if we have the eyes to see. Definitely, in a certain level of realization, you can start to see it more and more everywhere.
Yeah, I can see certainly how I'd probably be able to express. I mean, I'm quite musical and creative in that way, and I guess.
And again, where is that music coming from inside you? Is it coming from wanting to be a good musician, or is it just coming? Then there's a difference. So even something that's expressing duality can be inherently non-dualistic in where it's coming from. So these words I'm speaking now are in duality, but they're coming out of the emptiness, and they're not planned or anything like that. It's
Yeah,
not so
absolutely.
much what the content is, it's where it's coming from, isn't it?
So what I do, for example, is when I listen to music, which is inherently very dualistic, if you listen to the themes of the music and the contents of the song, it's usually propping up the individual, the separate self, and the pains, the sorrows, the stories of that particular separate self. So
There's a whole industry there, isn't there?
Exactly, the entire movies, everything's predicated on the separate self. But then when I listen to it, and I get very involved, and I completely lose myself, but I'm almost sublimating.
Perhaps more important than what you're listening to is where you're listening from now.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, as in what's happening is in. Yeah. There's almost like an alchemy that's been performed in the mind of the music out, rather than it, like it's almost, I'm creating alternative versions in my mind that are more almost like free range, chicken, converting processed chickens into free range chicken. So from that music, which is in service of the separate self, I'm kind of converting it into music that's in service of the totality. So you see it, and it comes from a deeper place, and it's
good.
It's like,
and whatever makes your heart sing in that way is good, isn't it?
yeah. No,
thank you very much for sharing that. Appreciate it. Good to talk to you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one here in the room. I'll come to you in a moment, Sarah. Steve.
Well, nice to see you. Nice to be here. This last few weeks I've been sort of flat. Not poorly, not in a bad way. Not just flat, and no sort of interest in listening to Satsang. I like to come here, but to listen on YouTube, I'm going on to. I just sort of no interest in sangers. I've noticed I've missed all last week, and
So sort of feeling disengaged from.
a little bit, yeah. But I'm not a man when I come here. I'm just totally in there. You know what I mean? It's just that's what I'm looking at. Is it wrong? Is it right or wrong? Is it? And then what we've just been talking about, there's no right or wrong.
There's going to be periods where you're more or less engaged in it, isn't there? Periods where it's all you want to do, and in periods where you just don't want to do it at
I've
all.
lost that sort of.
Yeah.
I perhaps I can probably a bit of feeling of lost maybe, and it'll come back or it won't. Usually doesn't at some point. But I like to believe there's a change going on. Life just going on as normal, and situations are coming up as normal. But I reckon there's something different also in the way I'm seeing it. Although it can suck me in now and again into the lonely on my own here, but I can get into that now. But it's a little just pop up and the sun go. But generally, it's like although it feels dry, it feels sort of level. That makes sense.
When we start to disengage from the mind to whatever extent, it can feel like I'm disengaging from life a little bit, because a lot of the things we've been doing because our mind's been leading us to do them, so as we come out of being pulled around by thoughts so much, then we're going to experience a different thing in our everyday life, aren't we? We might find that we're moved to do something different or not do anything at all, that we're just going with how the self wants to move, what it's driving the body to do, rather than doing things because I've been following my thoughts. I should go to this satsang, or I should go to a sangha meetup, or those kind of things. The shoulds in any way are going to fall away, aren't they? Shoulds and shouldn'ts, and more organically, just whatever the self wants to do, it will do. And that can feel a little bit like a ship without a rudder at first, can't it? Just kind of a little bit less direction, or
No, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah, a bit like that. But when we've been talking now, just like when we're doing the meditation itself, the silence and the thoughts, they're just the same thing. I've noticed that in myself, and I've found myself. I deal with a lot of people. I know a lot of people that's sort of different beliefs in this, any of them strong beliefs sometimes, and I find myself arguing with them in my mind. You know what I mean? I need to explain to these people where they're going wrong.
Somebody's laughing behind you because it's like,
yeah, that's the sort of thing that goes on in me. You know what I mean? And each time it happens, I catch myself and I feel bad about it. And
So
Or
your
the bad
body's
feeling
just,
comes.
your body's just having this conversation with someone, and your mind's having this argument with them at the same time.
Something
right?
like that.
Yeah.
You're not getting it, mate. Are you? You know what I mean? I don't so much say it, but it's a bit of a drive there to do it. And when I notice it, I say, you're doing it again, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, is it? And I thought, even looking at, so listen, sorry.
Go ahead.
I am right, finish what I was saying, that's all. I think I'm on the really, does that matter, Steve? You know what I mean? Why do I feel bad about it? Why do you know? It's only because you even ignore that is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's just a thought, again, like other ones.
Yeah. This shouldn't be happening.
I'll let you speak now.
Thank you very much. Is it my turn now? Yeah. It shouldn't be happening is the thought that's disturbing you, right? I shouldn't be having this argument in my mind while I'm trying to be here with this person. So for a long time, we try to stop the argument because we think that's what's disturbing us. If I could just sit here with an empty head and have a conversation, I'll be fine. But if it's if it's something even simpler than that, the idea that it shouldn't be how it is right now, that there shouldn't be this argument going on inside my head. That's a rejection of this moment as it is right now, isn't it?
I haven't seen it exactly that, but that's sort of the road on, yeah.
So even simpler than trying to clear your head, which might not be possible right now, it is just to fully be with however the self is showing up. If it's showing up as a lot of thoughts about what this person is saying, or what you want to say to them, what you want to get across to them, that type of thing. If you don't resist it, it's going to be different, isn't it? It's the only thing that's causing us to suffer is the resisting what is.
Yeah, it's so subtle, isn't it?
Very subtle, yeah.
You sort of think I've got it, you haven't, so it's coming in here somewhere.
I can believe the thought, you know, when my mind is empty and I'm just noticing the awareness, I feel so much better. So immediately we buy the idea that in order to feel good, my mind has to go quiet. And if it's not doing that, then there's something wrong. It should not be this way is the conclusion we all come to. But what if, as we were just doing at the start, I just notice my mind's talking, I notice the person's talking, I notice the formlessness, and then my attention goes back to what my mind is saying, and it goes back to what the person's saying, and then I might notice the formlessness for a few seconds, and then I'm noticing my thoughts again, and that's all that's really happening, really, isn't it? And there won't be any suffering in that if you don't entertain the should. It should be different than it is. Right now, the self, or in that situation, the self is showing up as this spaciousness, in which the room is appearing, the people in the room, you and the person you're talking to, probably the thoughts that they're having about you, the thoughts that you're having about them, whatever words are being, it's showing up in all these ways, isn't it? In that moment then. If you don't resist that, it's a different experience. It's probably only that one thought, this should not be occurring in here, that's causing this to occur in here. So something just can't be bothered pushing against reality, even when it's something like that. There's a laziness coming that I just can't be bothered pushing against that. What's it like to just be here while my mind is having this conversation and my body is having this other conversation? What's that like? What's that like? Just being there when that's going on and not choosing or trying to get rid of anything.
That's what you've just been talking about, isn't it? I say that is what I...
it's very subtle, like you said, very subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just thinking you're doing it right, you're not doing it right. Something like it just gets in there and it twists around.
We can go from the start time, we can get, I really didn't understand that. I really want to get more out of it. I'm going to watch it again. Or I totally got that and I feel totally different. Or somewhere in between those two. Or no idea what just happened at all. I've just been sat in this room for an hour and I don't know what on earth's going on. And if we're not in resistance to any of those options, we'll feel peaceful. If we walk out of here going, I feel confused, but I should have got more out of it, will be disturbed immediately because we're pushing against what is. So all of this noise and talk is just to say, stop pushing against what is. All of it. But sometimes people don't hear me when I say that.
I hear you, but it's unforgotten.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the
yeah.
other one, yeah. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take Angie. Sorry, Sarah, rather. And maybe one more after that. Ian's got a question. We'll take Sarah and then Ian, and we'll leave it there today.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
My question is there a, say, valid place? Is there a valid reason for, say, the infinite to take the form or become this finite person or body mind structure? Say if there is a valid reason why wanting to do that.
You could say that it does it just for the fun of it, or the infinite being wants to, even that's a paradox, but let me finish the sentence anyway. It wants to explore itself and understand itself. When it's appearing as the field, the emptiness, it doesn't want anything. It doesn't need to know itself, doesn't even not know itself. All of that's out, just irrelevant. And then it starts to make these shapes, and it's experiencing itself as a raindrop, as a cloud, as a snail, as a cat, as a table, as a human being. And it's having ever more complex experience of itself, what it's like to be that form, that shape. And eventually it appears as a human being, where it can think about itself and everything else that seems to be everything else. And it forms the conclusion that it's only in one place. This is what I am here. So then it thinks it makes sense to think about everything else. But really, it's all coming from this urge to understand, to experience, to know itself. In the world of form, it's on a journey to becoming ever more self-aware. And as a human being, it can become completely self-aware. As a snail, it's just experiencing snailness, It's not really going to be able to ask, where did I come from? And what happens when I die? And all of those questions, which it can as a human being. So it's kind of just for the fun of it, and also just to know itself in a way, to experience what it's like to feel limited and separate, and then to transcend that as well, back to where it originally started. So in some ways, as a formlessness, it's not doing any of that. All of this is irrelevant. All the satsang we could ever have is irrelevant. The field is the field forever, never going to be any different, never confused, never enlightened, nothing changing. And then when it appears as a form, it can get very confused about itself, especially as a human being. So it kind of wants to understand and know.
So like we're talking about the formless and forms. Like the formless wanting to have fun, then it take the forms, but from the form side, it doesn't seem like it's having fun.
No, because it seemingly forgets its essential nature in the form, because it starts to think in dualistic terms. But it can also then transcend that and have this conversation. There seems to be two of us having a conversation, and we're doing this for fun, aren't we? For understanding, for fun, for learning, for freedom, for openness. There seems to be two of us having this conversation, but there really isn't. And it can have that play as a human being. It can seem that there's a conversation going on here between two of us.
It seems like even say as a human being, if say we rooted from the infinite, we want to be here. And then we forget that we actually made the choice to become like a human being, experience everything. Like we actually, it's our choice. We want to be here, and then we complain about, then we get lost here.
Yeah.
But initially, actually, we want to be here.
Yeah, we came here to have this body-mind vehicle to play out the sense of duality, so that I could see whatever I'm still holding on to, what beliefs I'm holding on to. I can only see what I'm holding on to. I won't be aware of them only in my energetic form. In my physical form, I'll experience them playing out as my life. Then I can begin to see them finally and transcend them. But first, to do that, we've got to realize that at some point we chose this, that we are the infinite being, actually. And then we can see those beliefs aren't true and all of that. There is an amnesia that happens when I begin to believe I am only this body. I temporarily lose awareness of everything else that came before that is me and that is other than the physical body. You know, there's only an intense laser-like focus on what's going on with this body, the thoughts in this head, the emotions this body's feeling, and whatever this body is experiencing. There's a fascination with that for such a long time, isn't there? So it has to overcome that first before it can begin to find its real source. It's like picking up a pair of binoculars that you're looking through and then forgetting that you're looking through them and thinking that these binoculars are you. You know, so that for a lot of time there's a fascination with what you're seeing through the binoculars and not the one that's seeing. It takes a little while to get over that fascination of it. Does that help you? We could talk about this one forever. Why does the self do this? Well, it doesn't do it on one level, doesn't it? You know, it's absolutely as it always was. Paradoxically, it's having all these satsangs all over the world, trying to figure out what it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Good to talk to you. Thank you. Okay, Ian, did you? Last but not least.
I think my question's about seeing formless and forms.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Okay.
Seeing them and not seeing the difference. Kind of relates to the few things over the last few months in my life where I realised a few areas were going a bit pear-shaped, and I probably have been a bit pear-shaped for quite a while. And I did the usual thing of trying to change the form first, the reflection.
Which we all do. When I change my life, I'll feel better.
Yeah. So nothing really happened when I tried
Well,
to do
you
that.
had a lot of opportunity to see that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You really started to see that doesn't work so well. Yeah.
So after a bit of help, I kind of started to become more interested in my kind of my formlessness, the infinite spaciousness and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the areas of my lives have started to change a little bit and seem to be going some quicker than others, but more in the right direction.
So by letting go, trying to change that, focusing on what you are more, then it starts to change anyway. And your mind goes, oh, God, I've been trying so hard for so long to get this life thing figured out. And now,
yeah. But then you said this morning, I should be able to see formless as the same and have the same kind of relationship. That's the right word. So it doesn't matter whether I'm really separated and really concentrating on a particular form. That should feel the same as when I'm really aware of the the formlessness.
Let's just slow down there. So I can either focus on form or formlessness. And you said, I think, if not, then tell me, but when I'm separate and focusing on forms. So do we have to feel separate while we're focusing on forms? So right now, my eyes can scan everything in this room and everyone, and there's no division happening inside. Where does that division come from when we're focusing on form? When I'm looking at the shapes, the way the self is appearing, that innate sense of being a separate self then is activated when I start to think about what I'm looking at. So if I sit here and think about you, it'll seem like I'm here thinking about you over there. And it'll emphasize the sense that there's two of us here. But if I just look now, there's just a shape here in front of me. I don't mean that as an insult. There's just a
no, good way to put it, really.
there's just literally just all these shapes. I'd have to engage my mind to say that's a human being and that's the chair, wouldn't I? To label and categorize. I'd also have to engage my mind to say that's a form and this is formlessness. So if you can look at the forms, the shapes in your life while you're working with them, sorting out these areas, as you said, without getting involved in separation, have at it, good. If not yet, then it might be more helpful to choose the formlessness still, temporarily. Because without the thoughts, your experience of both will be the same. If I don't know what the word form or formless means, if I don't have any recollection, or I choose to disregard what I think they mean, if I let go of even those two labels, why should my experience be any different? If I don't know I'm looking at form or formless, which is where the field is, the emptiness, it's not really going, this is form and this is formless, is it? It's just here. It doesn't have any categories of opposites.
So the very act, is it my very act of believing that to deal with the situation, trying to change the form, means I go into the belief that I have to go into separation to do that?
Yeah, the only way I can perceive forms is by being identified as the body.
Yeah.
Or listening to thoughts. And that's not true, is it? Because when if you're just scanning around the room here now, there's loads of objects here, seemingly. You don't really have an opinion about that clock or that door. You might have an opinion about me and you and, other things in the room. But that is where the separation comes in, isn't it? You don't feel offended by a clock, or you don't feel, you don't have a reaction inside to an inanimate object. Why? Because you're not thinking about them. And it isn't any sense of separation. If you just look at that chair, there's no sense of separation there. Your eyes are just looking at a shape, aren't they? Literally. Nothing else is happening.
Yeah.
If you start to think about, I wish I was back in my chair and not sat here in front of these people, then you'll start to really feel like someone.
Yeah.
And then you'll remember that you're talking to someone else, and you start to feel a division inside because you've gone with the mind rather than the actual experience of all of us is we're just looking at shapes from the shapelessness. And you can really engage in your life where there needs to be some engagement, maybe, as you were saying, but noticing where you tend to think about it and coming out of that.
Because it's like an urge to kind of live life fully. And I can see even before I knew about any spiritual stuff as a young kid or a teenager, I would prefer the formlessness, even though I didn't know what it was. But there's kind of an urge now to kind of...
Even better than that experience, even better than that, as good as that is, is not knowing what they are,
Yeah.
forgetting those last two labels,
Yeah.
right? So that my experience is utterly unchanged if I'm sat in a room with 100 beings,
Yeah.
loud music, or in an airport or something, or if I'm just utterly alone in deep meditation, I feel the same inside. That in fact there's no difference there.
Yeah.
Of course, we take some time to get to that point, but you can see the difference is how you're thinking and feeling about what you're looking at that engages the sense of a separate someone.
Right.
So perceiving forms, you can't get away from it, can you? But thinking about them and feeling separate to them is optional.
Yeah. And having beliefs around that is optional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you just look at your life, it will begin to change anyway, as you noticed. Just look at it. Just show up for it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you haven't, but just to emphasize what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
that it'll start to change by itself.
Yeah.
In a way that you can't possibly manage or achieve when you're thinking about it, or so infinitesimally slow that it's just
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
good. Lovely. Okay, so it's a good place to bring it to a close. Thank you very much. Namaste.